Hello folks, and welcome to my review of the Honda Jazz Crosstar. This is a little 1.5 self-charging hybrid, gives you 109 brake horsepower and a 0 to 62 time of 9.9 seconds. This top spec version of the latest Jazz offers a slightly higher ride height and more rugged looks, but don't get confused and think this thing's going to be an off-road megastar. It's just not. The standard Jazz is available from £26,000 and the Crosstar from £28,000. So let's take a closer look at the Crosstar and see if it's worth that extra £2,000. Now you might be disappointed to learn that the boot in the Crosstar is actually fractionally smaller than in the standard Jazz. I've got 298 litres of boot space here with all the seats in the upright position. Put those down and you get 838 litres up to window height, or 1199 litres if you go to roof height. And with those seats nice and flat, it is really like a little bit of a small van. The other great thing, of course, in the Honda Jazz is the fact that the rear seats lift up, which gives you plenty of load space there, and it's much taller. So if you want to put large like potted plants in there or something like that, it's actually a really good way of carrying them. The Jazz has always been versatile when it comes to storage, and it's good to see this one follow suit, although with the Crosstar a little bit more boot wouldn't have been a problem. So up front in the Jazz, the first thing you notice is the abundance of cloth. There's cloth literally everywhere, including on the seats. Now, cloth seats are often seen as a little bit of a negative these days, as opposed to leather or synthetic leather, whatever it may be. Now, Honda claims these seats are actually water repellent, which really takes away one of the USPs of a leather seat, does it not? So that bit of added practicality really wouldn't put me off the cloth seats. They are reasonably comfortable. There's not a massive amount of side support though, and there's no lower lumbar adjustment, which is disappointing. The steering wheel's a lovely thing. So this two-pronged affair, very nice. Most modern Hondas come with this exact steering wheel. It's a nice thing under the hands. It's just got just the right number of thumb controls. Everything makes perfect sense. Everything's where you expect it to be. Good result with that one. Clear, if unspectacular, driver information display. It's nice and bright. It displays everything you want it to. The infotainment system is a huge leap forward from Honda systems of old. It's really very good. If you want to, you can use wireless Apple CarPlay, as I am now, and you've got plenty of real estate. Nice bright screen in this. This one feels a bit brighter than the screen I had in the 𝑘𝐺𝑉, which felt a tiny bit dull. I'm sure it's the same system, and it may be my memory or my eyes tricking me, but this one feels nice and bright and vibrant. You've got physical dials and knobs for the air conditioning controls and one for the volume. These are really nice and tactile as well, very good quality. Two USB-A's down here. We've got a 12-volt power outlet. You've then got a very traditional drive mode select, which I love. I mean, lots of manufacturers now are going to funny little joysticky things and twiddly knobs, buttons even on previous Hondas, but I personally prefer the traditional lever. We've then got your electronic parking brake, your automatic brake hold button, and you've got your economy mode. Here we've got a little bit of storage, a couple of cup holders, and a glove box here and here. Good job, Honda. In the back here, despite the fact you can't move this rear bench backwards and forwards, there's plenty of leg room and loads of foot room. And just look at that for headroom. You could be comfortably in the back of this car at 6'2" with no issues whatsoever. The middle seat is a complete non-event, let's face it, but it often is in cars of this size. We've got electric window controls here and just two USB-A sockets down here. Otherwise, it's fairly sparse, but the quality of everything feels very nice indeed. Something else I want to give a special mention to in this car is the quality of the audio system. This Crosstar's actually got a subwoofer in the boot, and it really shines through. It's a very good quality sound system, nice and clear, and as good as you're going to find really in a small car in this class. Okay folks, so when we get the Jazz out on the road, the first thing that strikes you about the car is it's extremely nippy around town. Normally in a car you might say quick, but in a Jazz I think it's nippy. It gives you sort of a feeling of positivity. It's very easy to maneuver. You can quickly pull away from junctions. It's just a nice thing to drive. It's pleasant. However, once you get out onto the open road, it loses a little bit of its charm, just really thanks to the fact that it's got an e-CVT setup. Now that's not a traditional CVT gearbox, but it feels like one. An e-CVT is actually very, very clever. It sort of uses the engine as a generator for the electric motors that power the wheels. And so it's just got that one sort of gear, if you like. It's not a gear, it's a direct drive, but we can get very nasal about these things if we want. But it does feel, in practice, like a CVT, so there we go. When you, I don't know if the mic picked it up, but when you accelerate hard, you get like a, and then it goes down. It's nowhere near as offensive as it is in a traditional CVT car, but it shares some of those mannerisms. Let's face it though, folks, if you're buying yourself a Jazz or a Jazz Crosstar, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be driving around town, so it's really a bit of a non-issue. So largely thanks to those big glass panels here and the huge windscreen, you've got better forward visibility in this car than in any of its rivals, by a stretch, I would say, as well. It really does let in lots of light and give you a really great view of the road. And despite having large pillars in the rear corners, you've still got really good visibility in the back, because the back screen is much bigger than in cars twice this size, and you've also got a really good reversing camera as well. So visibility is one of this car's strengths. Despite the fact that this Jazz Crosstar does have a little bit of a higher riding position and it looks a bit beefier than, you know, some small city cars, it's just as easy to park, because the actual footprint of the car is not too much different to something like a Ford Fiesta, for example. So it's a nice, easy thing to live with. Now, something else that this little Crosstar excels in is its fuel consumption. The official WLTP figure is just under 60. I think it's 58.9 mpg combined, but you'll get that in the real world. You'll get every bit of it. And that's really quite impressive. I guess a direct rival to this car would be something like the Toyota Yaris Cross, which I reviewed recently, and that had amazing MPG figures, the best I've seen, about 63, 64 in the real world. This is really not too far off, folks. If you're after a really cheap, economical little runaround in town, this thing will serve you well. Now, where this little Jazz Crosstar doesn't fare quite so well is with the ride comfort. You may think that because this is a slightly raised version, albeit only by 16mm, you're going to get more cosseting suspension, you're going to get a bit of a pillowy ride. And I'm not on the smoothest road in the world here at the moment, but it's not terrible, and it is a bit crashy. I am getting thrown around a little bit, and it is a little bit disappointing. And now for some people, they're not going to notice it, or it's not going to bother them. Obviously, I sort of do this for a living, so I notice every little fault in a car, but it is certainly a bit crashier over the rough stuff than you would expect from a car of this kind. The only other real negative when it comes to actually driving the Jazz, I would say, is the steering's a tiny bit numb. But again, in fairness, you don't expect an ultra positive steering experience in a car of this class. You know, an MX-5, it is not. Let's face it, folks, the target audience for a car like the Jazz Crosstar is probably going to be using the car for trips to the supermarket, local journeys, popping off to B&Q or the garden centre to pick up a few bits, and not a great deal more, an occasional longer run. And for all those things, it's very well suited. It doesn't have the biggest boot in the world, but it's got some clever storage options with those rear seats, etc. And it's easy to get around in, easy to park, and it's going to deliver good MPG. There's not really too much not to like if you're in the market for that kind of car. If you are part of that target demographic, I would suggest you consider the Honda Jazz Crosstar, also consider the Toyota Yaris Cross, but also have a think about just the standard Honda Jazz, because to me the Crosstar doesn't do all that much differently. And it is a little bit of a premium price, so you could save yourself a couple of £1,000 and just get yourself a standard Honda Jazz, which is an exceptionally good car. I've reviewed one of those in the past, so go and check that one out. If it were me, I'd probably just go for the standard Jazz. This does have every bit of spec thrown at it, but if you went for the standard Jazz, it does pretty much everything this one does. Very, very similar cars. This one's only been raised by 16 mil. You think that's 1.6 centimetres. It's got some roof rails on the top and a bit more spec thrown in. But somehow the standard Jazz just seems to fit a box a bit easier. It's a spacious, standard city car. And this is like an SUV that's not quite. So I'm just going to take to my notes here and give you an overall summary of the car. Number one, the sound system's fantastic. Water repellent seats are a nice touch, especially when cloth is the only option. Visibility, forward visibility in the car is astoundingly good. Like most Honda Jazz cars that have been and gone, it's got very clever storage. The fact that you can fold those back seats up, the fact that you've got a little cubby in the dash as well as a glove box, they're just nice touches that you don't always get on other brands. And you've got huge headroom. I mean, that rear passenger space is fantastic for tall folks. It really is. You've got loads of leg room, loads of foot room and tons of headroom. Downsides, it doesn't offer much over the standard Jazz. You know, I would struggle to sort of justify paying the extra couple of £1,000 to go for the Crosstar over the standard Jazz. That may be a personal thing. You may have really good reasons why you want the Crosstar rather than the standard car, but for me, meh. And the main reason I say that is it's not different enough from the standard Jazz. I think if the ride height had been a tad taller and they'd maybe offered a little bit more boot space, you'd have more compelling reasons to upgrade to the Crosstar. And finally, it's a bit of a firm ride, but the same could be said of the standard Jazz. Just the fact that it's got that higher ride height, sort of mentally you're sort of already thinking, well, it's going to be a bit comfier, a bit nicer over the bumps. And really, it's not too different at all. So what are your thoughts on the Crosstar? Is it a really useful addition to the Jazz lineup, or is it a crossover too far? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Of course, if you're interested in leasing a Honda Jazz or a Honda Jazz Crosstar, please click the link to Lease Loco that's in the video description and pinned as the top comment. That will take you straight to all the best deals available at the time you click that link. Please give the video a thumbs up, please subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll see you on the next one.